Shalom, this week Torah portion is going to be Hasinu, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this portion. I'm going to connect it to chapter 30 from the last week portion, and we're going to look at it a little bit from this week's perspective from the temple and stuff like that. When we study the Bible, there is some biblical patterns that we have to follow, and I use the methodology and the educational ladder from my teacher Rico Cortez because it actually set a foundation for you to start study. When we use this way of study, we will understand the context of the Bible based on the architecture context, biblical archaeology, historical context, or the biblical legality, which is very important for us to understand because nowadays, if we don't study the biblical law, we won't understand what we really need to follow, what we can follow, and what we cannot follow, what pertains to the temple, what pertains to the land, what we can do in the diaspora outside from Israel. There is a lot of 613 commandments, and actually 279 of those pertains to the temple. So we have to follow a biblical pattern inside the Bible and try to find it everywhere. Also, we have to study and look at the ancient Near East cultures because it's very important for us to understand the Bible. Remember, the Bible was not written for us. We were not the original audience. We were not there when it was written. So there is some vocabulary or language that we will find in the Bible that it actually pertains to the way of understanding of the ancient Near East culture. So this is why it's very important for us to understand this. So when we go to this, to the book of Deuteronomy, especially chapter 32, we will see some very important information on this. We have to consider the book of Deuteronomy as a covenant renewal. So this is very important because now we have to understand how a covenant was renewed in the ancient Near East. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how a covenant was renewed in ancient Near East. So before we start studying this, we have to consider that God is the sovereign and Israel is the vassal. So we have to study what a sovereign was, a king, and what a vassal was in the ancient Near East. What he was supposed to do in order to swear his allegiance to the sovereign and how he was supposed to act in regards to the sovereign. So these are very important themes in the Bible because when we see the pattern of God as a sovereign and Israel as a vassal, we will understand the covenant between Israel and God in the book of Exodus chapter 19, chapter 24. We will understand the structure and we will find the consequence of what happened when the vassal rebel or act in rebellion against the sovereign, in this case, God. So in ancient Near East, when you had a sovereign and the vassal swear allegiance to the king, he was supposed to do certain stuff. One of them was to bring tribute. The other was to protect and come and fight in behalf of the sovereign if it was needed. The other thing was that there were some laws and stipulations that he was supposed to follow. Same thing when we study the Bible. God gave Israel some laws and some regulation for them to follow. Now, the book of Deuteronomy is basically going to tell Israel. It was actually written in said in one day. Moses, it was what he was speaking to the people of Israel before he died. So it was basically telling them to be loyal to God and to obey all the commandments. That's basically the structure of the book of Deuteronomy. And then there is a couple of structure renewal that they were supposed to do when they go inside the land. In ancient Near East, also, they were supposed to read the covenant renewal every certain amount of time. It all depends where in which country in what nation they find themselves. Some of them were 2 years, some of them were 7 years. So it all depends where they were. But there were some specific times when they were supposed to renew the covenant and read it in public so that everybody from the nation would understand their responsibility. The Bible is structured in the same way. So this is the book of Deuteronomy chapter 30. It says, "This commandment I am giving you today is not difficult for you, nor is too remote. It is not in heaven, as thought one must say, who will go up to heaven to get it for us and proclaim it to us, so we may obey it. And it's not across the sea, as thought one must say, who will cross over the other side of the sea and get it for us and proclaim it to us so that we may obey it. For the thing is very near to you, it is in your mouth and in your mind, so that you can do it. So it's basically telling the people of Israel the commandment is close to you. It's not far from you. You just gotta obey it. Look, I have set before you life and prosperity on the other hand, death and disaster on the other hand. One hand, and death and disaster on the other hand. When we actually read this, chapter 30, verse 15, we actually can look at the book of Genesis, chapter 2. And we're going to go into that in a little bit. Because God basically established the same, and he, in different words, but he told the same thing to Adam. This is the tree. Here, you cannot eat of this. You can eat from everything else, but the day that you eat from this tree, you will surely die. So it's life and death. You have to choose. The same thing God tell Israel. And one thing that we have to consider is that God is bringing Israel from exile. Remember when we see the methodology here, God is bringing Israel from exile, from chaos, from the realm of death, from their rebellion, and is bringing them back to Him. And we have to consider the land of Israel as Eden, as bringing the people, the Israelites, back from the chaos to order and the land of Israel as Eden, establishing them as a people, as a nation. So that's a theme that we have to consider when we're studying the Bible. It says, let's see here. What I'm commanding you today is to love your God, and when we read love, it's actually a fidelity, it's loyalty, to walk in his ways and to obey his commandment, his statutes, and his ordinances. So one thing that I'm gonna highlight here when we read this, obey his commandment, we have to consider that actually in ancient Near East there were commandments. There were legal codes. We have the Code of Hammurabi, we have the Ashnunal laws, we have the Hittite laws. So there were actually codes in the ancient Near East that people had to follow. So this is nothing new for the people of Israel. It's actually they understand what a code of law is for them. So now I'm going to tell you the difference between the codes from the Hittites, from the Ashnunal laws, from the Hammurabi code. The difference is that they actually deal with injustice. Some people had more preference over others. So the poor could not afford to pay some fines, or let's say, so he actually died. So it's the same thing like if somebody if somebody kills somebody, if he was from the elite or from the high status, if he had a high status, he could actually bring another slave, or he could pay something in exchange for his life. In the Torah, it actually God tells that it doesn't matter if you have a high status or not, you have to fulfill the law. So you have to die if you voluntarily, intentional, you kill somebody. The other thing that we will find in the ancient code, that we will find in the Bible and not in the ancient codes, is going to be sanctity. God deals with sanctity. God takes all the commandments, actually the realm from the realm of being only secular, that in ancient Near East the laws were pertained only to the secular world, and God established what is morality and what is sacred. So basically, all the laws have to do with the purity of Israel and being in the land. So basically, if you act with injustice, that's connected with the temple. So you are actually contaminating, or you are polluting the temple. So in that way, the people of Israel will understand that if it's actually injustice, is something against the covenant from God. Actually, when we see the structure from the methodology, you have covenant, you have righteousness and justice. So if the people of Israel are in covenant with the God of Israel in Psalm 89, chapter verse 14, it tells us that the foundation of God's thrones is justice and is justice. So justice and mercy. So basically, if the people of Israel act against justice, they are actually breaking the covenant. It's part of the covenant. So we will see that the law is not only a law, but it's also law, and it has to do with sanctity. There is also laws that pertain to the realm of sanctity. The people has to stay inside this realm in regards to temple laws, in regards to morality laws, that in ancient Near East we will find some of them, but it's not as the Torah basically stipulate them for the people in order for them to be inside what we see here in the methodology, God's sacred space and the temple, and be able to be in the land. Because the moment they started polluting the land with injustice or with covenant rebellion, then they are actually polluting the land the same way that the Canaanites were doing. So at this point, they are basically going into exile because they are acting in rebellion to the covenant. That's why it's very important that we understand the covenant with the God of Israel, so that we can be loyal to the stipulations or the laws inside the covenant and be able to stay in the land. So it says, obey his status. Then you will live and become numerous, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land which you are about to possess. However, if you turn aside and do not obey, but are lured away to worship and serve other gods, I declare to you this very day that you will certainly perish. You will not extend your time in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess. Remember, the moment that Adam ate from that tree, he was exiled from Eden. Same thing with the people of Israel. If they go into idolatry or they transgress the covenant stipulations, then they will go from the land and they will go into exile. It says, "Today I invoke heaven and earth as witness against you that I have set life and death, blessing and curse before you. Therefore choose life, that you and your descendant may live. I also call on you to love your God, to obey him, to obey your Lord, the Lord your God, to obey him and be loyal to him, for he gives you life and enables you to live continually." So now let's go to the book of Genesis. And if we go to the book of Genesis, chapter 3, and we will see the same pattern. It says, now the, okay, let's go here. Let me go up a little bit more. Um, Okay, here, verse 15. The Lord God took the man and placed him in the orchard in Eden. So God was going to place the people of Israel inside the land to care for it and to maintain it. So the purpose of Israel was to maintain the land of Israel free from pollution, to care for it and keep it outside from pollution. Then the Lord, the same thing that Adam was supposed to do in the Garden of Eden was the same thing that Israelites were supposed to do inside the land. Then the Lord God commanded the man, "You may freely eat fruits from every tree of the orchard, but you must not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. For when you eat from it, you will surely die." So it's the same pattern. God is telling the people of Israel, you can go into the land, I will place you in the land of Israel, but you cannot do according to the custom of the Canaanites. The moment that you do the same way or you act in the same way as the Canaanites, you will surely be exiled from the land. It's the same pattern. It's life and death. And it says, so basically God is telling the Israelites to choose life here. Therefore, choose life so that you and your descendant may live. Remember, death and life. It's going to be always a choice between life and death. Okay, so let's go here. Now, the Moses, understanding all this, after he finished all the covenants and everything and what he was telling the people of Israel, God tell him to summon Joshua, because remember, Joshua is going to be his successor. And then the Lord said to Moses in verse 16, "You are about to die, and then these people will begin to prostitute themselves with the foreign gods of the land into which they are going." So remember, God is telling Moses that these people, the Israelites, they will actually prostitute when they go inside the land. Remember that Moses has been with them for 40 years. Moses has interceded for them when they rebel. Moses was willing to put his life down for them at one point, although God did not allow it, but he was willing to put his life down. And now God is giving him a great news. These people will actually rebel against me, and they will prostitute, and they will reject me, and they will break my covenant. So Moses must be like, This is what I have worked for. I have teach these people, I have cared for them, I have bring them here, and now I know that they will rebel against God when they go inside the land. Interesting. It says they will reject me and break my covenant that I have made with them. At that time, my anger will erupt against them, and I will abandon them and hide my face from them until they are devoured. Okay, so let's go. Here we see that there is a invocation of witnesses on chapter 31. Remember that Moses, he says, I call heaven and earth so that they may be witness against the land of Israel. So now chapter 32 is going to start with a song. Let's go here to the end of this. It was let's say when Moses finished writing out this scroll, the words of the law in their entirety, he commanded the Levites who carried the ark of the Lord's covenant, take the scroll of the law and place it beside the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God. Actually, this was a custom in ancient Near East where they would put place legal documents next to the inside the temples. So now there is a commandment in this portion also, we should actually tell them that they have to read verse 31, chapter 31, verse 10. It says, He command them at the end of 7 years, at the appointed time of the cancellation of debt, the feast of temporary shelter, is Sukkot. When all Israel come to appear before the Lord your God in the place he chooses, you must read the law before them, within their hearing. Gather the people, men, women, and children, as well as the resident foreigners in your villages, so they may hear and thus learn about the fear the Lord your God and carefully obey all the words of this law. So there is a commandment here that they have to read this law every 7 years. Remember, in ancient Near East, remember there if we go here, we gotta go now to the cultural context in ancient Near East. What did they believe as far as reading the covenant specification or stipulations in the ancient Near East? So we will find that some places they read every 7 years or every 2 years, depending on what location you was. So the Torah is actually telling them that they have to read every 7 years, and it's a covenantal renewal. So they will know the stipulations from the law, what God actually want them to follow and what God actually want them to do. So that's found here. And oh, it says that after he wrote this, he gave the scroll and they put it inside the ark. Okay, verse 27. For I know about your rebellion and stubbornness. Indeed, even while I have been living among you to this very day, you have rebelled against the Lord. You will even be even more rebellious after my death. Gather to me all your tribal elders and officials so I can speak to them directly about these things and call the heavens and the earth to witness against them. For I know that after I die, you will totally corrupt yourself and turn away from the path I have commanded you to walk. Disaster will confront you in the days to come, because you will act wickedly before the Lord, inciting them to anger because of your action. Then Moses recited words of this song from start to finish in the hearing of all the assembly of Israel. So here is where it starts our portion for this week, when Moses actually make a song and he gave them this song, and he told them that they have to have this song as a witness against them. So the song starts in this way, and actually we should be learning this song because it's part of the covenant. It actually tell them that they have to teach this song to the children of Israel. Let me see if I can find here. Let me see if I can find the commandment. There is a commandment here. Um, Okay, here. Then verse 44 of chapter 32. Then Moses went with Joshua, son of Nun, and recited all the word of this song to the people. When Moses finished reciting all these words to Israel, he said to them, Keep in mind all these words. I am solemnly proclaiming to you, today you must command your children to observe carefully all the words of this law. For this is no idle word for you. It is your life. By the word you will live a long time in the land you are about to cross the Jordan to possess. So there is an instruction for them to teach the children of Israel this song, so it can be a witness against them if they go astray. So now let's study a little bit of the structure of this song. It's very important, and we should actually be learning it because it's a commandment to learn um, this song. And it starts like this: Listen, O heavens, and I will speak. Hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. Remember that the heavens and the earth are called to be witnesses against Israel if they ever go astray. Okay, I'm gonna go here to some of my notes. Let me see here. Let me go here to my notes. Hatsinu, chapter 32. It has some scriptural foundations. For example, from the chapter, from verse 16 to 17, God turns Moses in chapter 31. God tells Moses that Israel will turn to other God after his death. Chapter 31, verse 19. The command to write down the song is actually a commandment number 613. So it would serve as witness against Israel. Deuteronomy 31:22, Moses writes the song that very day. Moses recited the words of the song before all the assembly of Israel in Deuteronomy 31:30. Now, these verses show that the son of Asinu was not optional. It was a command written and sung as a living testimony of the covenant. I believe, and this is my opinion, and I believe that if we look into studying the law, the legality from the Bible, studying the commandments, and teaching the commandments to the next generation, we can have the next generation is going to understand their responsibility. And I believe that when Israel stopped teaching the commandments, even within their nation, that's the time that problem began to start, because you don't know what to follow, what you cannot follow. Remember, in the ancient Near East, there in their time of living, there were not like we have Bibles today everywhere. So they were basically relying on the words and what they learned from the temple or the tabernacle at that time. So nowadays we have more ways of learning and understanding the commandment. So, and I do believe that if we study the commandment and start to look into it and go deep into the commandment, how it's applicable, to whom it's applicable, where, and and ask all these questions, I believe that we can come closer to the obedience to God, because actually that's his character. That's what he wants from his people to do. That's his law. So the verse, okay, with the libation, okay, the song of Asinu was not optional, it was command, was written. Okay, we read this. With the libation of Musaf offering on Shabbat, the Levites would sing the song of Hasinu. So in the temple service, when they do the libations, they would actually sing parts of this song from Deuteronomy 32, 1 to verse 43. They would divide the song into 6 segments. And now this deal with the temple service for the Musaf service. Okay, what are the Musaf service? The Musaf is the additional offerings that are brought to the temple each Shabbat, for example, or every festival day. So if you have a festival day, like let's say you have Sukkot, fall in between, you have Musafim, those offerings. If it's a new month, you have Musafim, additional offerings that are brought to the altar. If it's Yom Teruah, Rosh Hashanah, you have some offerings that are brought on that day during the Musaf service, which is actually around 12 o'clock. You have the Shaharit service, and then you have the Musaf, additional service to bring those offerings. So those are the Musaf, and that's when they would sing these 6 segments. So they would sing Hasinu from Deuteronomy 32, verse 1 through 6. Then they would sing Sahor, remember, from Deuteronomy 32, 7 to 12. They will read Yakivehu from Deuteronomy 32, 13 through 18. Vayar, the Lord saw, from verse 19 to verse 26. Lule, were it not, from verse 27 to verse 35. Kiyadim, for the Lord will judge, from verse 36 to verse 43. So they will recite one segment on each Shabbat over 6 weeks. When they finish the song, they will return to the beginning of the song again. They will start after 6 weeks. They will start again. Hasinu, Sehor, Yikebehu, and so on. So with the libation that accompanied the afternoon Tamid offering on Shabbat, they would sing as Yasir Moshe, which is the song from when they cross the sea, and then Mikamoha, who is like you from Exodus chapter 15 also. So these are the songs. This was actually done in the temple. When we study the service of the temple, these are actually stuff that were done during the temple service. But obviously, if we don't follow the biblical protocol as far as understanding based on the temple service or temple protocol, we will actually not see these details inside the Bible when we're studying. Okay, the Son of Asinu is theological linked to the temple cosmology. So now we're going to study a little bit about the cosmology of the temple when we study the Son of Hasinu. So the Son of Hasinu in Deuteronomy 32, 1 through 3 stand as one of the most theological rich and potentially sophisticated passages in the Hebrew Bible, positioned at the conclusion of the Pentateuch. It functions both as a covenant witness and as a prophetic vision of Israel's historic trajectory. So basically, this song is not only a witness, but is also a prophetic vision of what Israel's trajectory would take down the road in the years to come. They will actually disobey the covenant, they will actually transgress the covenant, and they will actually rebel against God. So this is going to be the trajectory. Remember, if we should see the methodology, it's going to be always be covenant, righteousness from God and justice, honor, new creation, order from chaos to order, and sacred space. The moment that Israel start to go against the covenant, is going to come what is the rebellion. That's called rebellion. Rebellion is going to bring the consequence, or it's going to activate the consequence of the covenant, which is exile, famine, death. Then it's going to be shame. Remember, if you are outside the covenant, it's going to bring shame. It's not going to be a new creation, but it's going to be chaos. So this is the protocol or the pattern that we will find in all the Bible. This is the pattern that we will find in Israel history. This is the pattern that we will find as believers in Yeshua inside any congregation. It's going to be the same pattern. So if we understand the pattern from the Bible, we will obviously see this pattern on any congregation or any group. So let's go here. Okay. Divine election, covenant betrayal. So this is divine election. This is the pattern. Divine election. Actually, let me do this here. It's gonna be divine election, covenant. Gonna be covenant betrayal. Gonna be judgment. And ultimate restoration. So this is the pattern that we will find everywhere. It's going to be divine election. God chooses Israel in chapter 19, verse 1 through 5. God chooses Israel as their people. Actually, let's go there to Exodus. Okay, here. Let's read here. Let's go to the book of Exodus, chapter 19. And then I'm going to go to Revelation chapter 5. Chapter 19, it says, let's say here, and now, verse 5, and now, if you will diligently listen to me and keep my covenant, then you will be my special possession out of all the nations, for all the earth is mine, and you will be to me a kingdom of priests and holy nation. These are the words that you will speak to Israelites. So this is divine election. God chooses Israel to be his people. Covenant betrayal. There's a covenant. They establish a covenant in chapter 19. We will see, and chapter 24 we will see that there's a covenant established between God and Israel. There's covenant betrayal. This is when Israel go and prostitute himself with idolatry, or when there is injustice, or when there is pollution of the land, but especially of the temple altar. And we can see this when we go to the book of Exodus, chapter 24. Let's go really quick. Exodus chapter 24. So this is when the covenant is ratified. It says, okay, Moses, verse 6, Moses took half of the blood and put it in bowls, and half the blood he splashed on the altar. He took the book of the covenant and read it aloud to the people, and they say, we are willing to do and obey, and all that the Lord has spoken. So Moses took the blood and splashed on the people, and he said, this is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. Moses and Aaron. So, okay, he took the blood and splashed it on the people, and he said, this is the blood of the covenant. Okay, let me see here. So he splashed, connected the altar, remember? He splashed on the altar. He took the book of the covenant and read it aloud. And they say they were willing to obey. And then Moses splashed on the people the blood and says, this is the blood of the covenant. So now there is a problem because they are connected with the altar. The moment that they act against the covenant, they actually pollute the altar. That's why if somebody do unwillingful um, sin, they have to bring blood into the altar in order to purify the altar. But if there is a rebellious sin, if somebody do rebellion, there is actually no offering against that he can bring to the temple. And the book of Psalm chapter 51 make us that very clear, because David, when he sinned, he says, if there were an offering, I would bring it to you. But he could not bring because what he did was rebellion. So the only person who could forgive is the great king. He could extend his mercy and forgive. And this is the same pattern that we will find with Yeshua. God extend his mercy and God forgive humanity from death by sending his son as a ransom so that the people don't have to die forever, according to Romans chapter 6, verse 23. But let me continue here. So if we go to the book of Revelation, remember it's the divine election, Revelation chapter 5. It's going to be the same pattern. Let me see here. Okay. Let me see, verse 5, 9. So they were singing a new song. You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were killed. And at the cost of your blood, of your own blood, you have purchased for God person from every tribe, language, people, and nation. Remember, purchase, the word here is going to be agorazo, purchase, which actually have to do with what is a ransom. For every tribe, language, people, and nation. You have appointed them as kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they will reign on the earth. Remember, it's not telling that we are now priests according to Melchizedek. No, it's telling us the same thing that God told Israel in chapter 19. You will be priest, a nation of priests, and a holy nation to me. But it's not telling that everybody is priest, because obviously we know that Aaron and his descendants were priests. So that has to be very clear for us to understand. Okay, so let's go back here to my notes. It says, so there's a pattern, divine election, where God chooses Israel from all the nations as his peculiar nation. He wants them to be holy, according to Leviticus chapter 19. Be holy, for I am holy. Now, there is covenant betrayal when they go and they do prostitution with the gods of Canaan or other gods from other nations. There is divine judgment. Actually, let me do here divine. There will be divine judgment against the people if they transgress the covenant. There is a lawsuit. Remember, in between, when they do covenant betrayal, there's going to happen some stuff in between. A messenger is going to come and tell them, you have transgressed the covenant. Return to me. Actually, the book of Hosea is specifically is saying that to the northern kingdom. In chapter 14, verse 1. It's saying actually it was the haftarah for last Shabbat, for Shabbat. It's telling return to me. So in between, when they transgress the covenant and divine judgment, God's going to send a messenger. In His mercy, He's going to send a messenger to tell the people you gotta repent, you gotta do tshuva, you gotta return from your bad conduct. You have transgressed the covenant, and the consequence from the covenant is death, exile. So now the people, they even if they repent or they go to exile, and then they repent from from where they are at, according to Leviticus chapter 26. I think it's verse 23 and 24. Let me see. Let's go here. Let's find really quick. Chapter 26. I think it's 40 something. Let's see. Yeah, 39, 40. Okay, 40. It says, however, when they confess their iniquity and their ancestor iniquity, which they commit by trespassing against me, here the word is going to be ma'al, disloyalty, infidelity against me, by which they also walk in hostility against me, and I myself will walk in hostility against them and bring them into the land of their enemies. And then their uncircumcised heart become humble, and they make up for their iniquity. I will remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, also my covenant with Abraham, and I will remember the land. So this is the legal stipulation inside the covenant, that if they transgress and they confess their sins, God is going to actually bring them back, not because they are worthy of it, but because God will remember the covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And He, because His name, and He swear, and His name is uh, in between, He will have mercy on them and bring them back. Okay, so let's go here. So that's the ultimate restoration if they confess their sin. Actually, Daniel chapter 9 talks about that, especially I think verse 1 from 1 to 26. When analyzed in relation to symbolic architecture of the Jerusalem temple, the song reflects a theological framework that integrates covenant history with the cosmic order. Integrate covenant history with the cosmic order. If we go to the chapter 32, it says, listen, O heavens, and I will speak here, O earth, the words of my mouth. My teaching will drop like the rain. My saying will drip like the dew, as rain drop upon the grass and showers upon the growth. For I will proclaim the name of the Lord, and you must acknowledge the greatness of our God. Actually, from this birth, I will proclaim the name of the Lord, and you must acknowledge the greatness of God. This is actually from where in the temple service, when you do the temple service, you bow down when you listen, when you hear the name of God. So that's why when you have some parts in some psalms that you say Selah, you have Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Baed, because it comes from this birth. When you, for I will proclaim the name of the Lord, you must acknowledge greatness of our God. So this is so that way we can see now the context of the temple. We are understanding this verse 3 from the chapter 32, we are understanding this according to the context of the temple and what the service was, how the service was done in the temple. When they hear the name of God, they would bow down and they would say, Baruch Shem Kevot Malchuto Leolam Baed. Blessed be His name forever. So it has to do this verse with temple protocol. Okay, let's continue here. Okay. As for the rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are just. He is a reliable God who is never unjust. He is fair and upright. So it has to do with historical things. So it says here, the temple serves as a cosmic order. The temple serves as a microcosm of creation, embodying the movement from chaos to order, impurity to purity. So this is actually what the temple teaches us. Sometimes if we don't study the temple, we won't understand exactly what's understood by chaos in the Bible, or what is order in the Bible, because the temple will show us exactly what is chaos, and the temple will tell us exactly what is order, and it's going to show us impurity from impurity. That's from the temple, impurity to purity, and exile to restoration. Somebody who has transgressed a commandment and unwillingly, and he's outside from the temple, he would understand when he comes to the temple, and he understands that he cannot come near to God. But it says in the Bible that in Leviticus chapter 1, that if somebody transgress, and when they bring, actually, let's go there to Leviticus chapter 1. Leviticus chapter 1, it says, when someone among you present an offering. Okay, let's go here. I think it's chapter 4, 3 or 4. Okay, then the Lord spoke to Moses, tell Israel, when a person sins, the 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 word is gonna be for hatat, by straying unintentionally. It's very clear. If somebody commit a sin by straying or going away, it says to make a mistake, to go astray. So somebody unintentionally make a mistake from any of the Lord commandment which must not be violated and violates any one of them, the high priest. Okay, so this is some regulations for the priest, for the whole congregation, for the leader, and for the common person. So it has some um, offerings if somebody go astray unintentionally, not intentionally, not intentional. So if somebody do something intentional, there is no offering for that. But if somebody made a mistake, there is an offering for that. So it's basically telling somebody that if you do something a mistake, you will not go into exile, which you should go to exile because you actually did a mistake, but it's still something against one of the commandments. But you bring what you're offering, and then you restore your relationship from God. You are actually, if you don't restore, if you don't bring the offering, you are actually going into exile. So it teaches us, the temple, how we can come from exile and be reconciled with God. That's the purpose of the temple. In this sense, Hasinu provided a poetic counterpart to temple theology when worship, covenant, and creation converge. God's temple as the center of the rock as a giver. A recurring motif in the song is a description of God as the rock. The epithets invoke stability, provision, and protection. Within the temple framework, God is the immovable center and dwelling presence from which life flows. Just as the temple symbolized the divine throne amidst creation, so the rock represents God as both the source of Israel's existence and the guarantor of the covenant order. The Levites' liturgical recitation of Asinu during the Shabbat offering reinforced the identification of God as the sustaining center of both cult and cosmos, chaos and order. Let me do this. The song narrates Israel's movement from covenant order into chaos. Verse 7 through 14, God is depicted as establishing Israel with care and blessing. Remember, this is the historical context. In verse 15 to 18, Israel responds with apostasy, abandoning the rock for foreign gods. The transition mirrors the temple roar as a locus of order. The sanctuary represents the structured cosmos, order space, in contrast to the disorder of the nation. So the temple is supposed to teach us the order space. Now, my question to you today is, if the temple is supposed to teach us or make a difference between what is the order space in contrast to the disorder from the nations, should we not study the temple so that it may teach us the difference between God's sacred space and what the nations believe? Is it not very important for us to understand and make a difference between the nations and God's sacred space and his temple? That was the plan for God, for Israel, all the time. Israel was supposed to keep the sacred space. Adam was supposed to keep the sacred space and make a difference. The temple and the Levites and the priests and the people of Israel, all of them were responsible for maintaining the land of Israel as a sacred space, maintaining the temple as a sacred space, so they could be an example of God to the other nations, and the other nations could see the God of Israel. Today, we have the same role, the same purpose, to show a difference between the way the world do things and the way God established what is sacred, what is holy. But all that we will understand if we study the temple. When Israel rebelled, they effectively caused choose chaos over order, impurity over holiness. Remember, this is very important because when Israel committed prostitution, idolatry, they rebelled, they committed injustice, they actually chose chaos over order, impurity over holiness. Same thing with Adam. When Adam eat from the fruit that was prohibited to him to eat, he actually chose chaos over order. And that's when you have death. When you choose chaos over order, the consequence of that chaos is going to be that chaos, we're going to call it rebellion, is going to bring the rebellion is going to bring chaos, is going to bring the choose. When you choose, you will choose rebellion, you choose chaos. It brings to you death and exile. The song dramatized the collapse of covenant order, anticipating exile as the dissolution of Israel's sacred space. So the covenant breach describing Hasinu inevitably leads to judgment. God's response is not arbitrary. It reflects the built-in consequence of impurity within the covenant system, just as impurity expelled Adam from Eden and bare priest from the sanctuary. So Israel rebellion result in national exile. So remember, the same way that what Adam did expel him from Eden and bear priests from the sanctuary, so Israel rebellion result in national exile. So that's why, remember, chapter 24 from the book of Exodus, the whole people are connected, indexed to the altar. So if somebody commit a transgression or the leaders commit transgression and they continue in that state of rebellion against God, the whole people as a nation will suffer the consequence of exile. In the temple symbolic world, exile is the outward expression of inner impurity. This is very important. In temple, this is very important. The temple symbolic world, exile is the outward expression of inner impurity, removal from God's dwelling place. So if we see somebody, if we see exile in the Bible, every time we see exile in the story of the Bible, we will see and we study what happened to the people or what they've been doing, we will see that there is inner impurity. And that's why they have to be removed from God's dwelling place, because God does not allow impurity to dwell among his place, because he is holy. He cannot tolerate impurity. That's why you have Yom Kippur, in order to cleanse the temple, so that God can continue dwelling within the people. But remember, this is from Israel's transgressions. It has to be cleansed, so God could maintain his presence within his people. The nation becomes the agent of divine judgment, yet the Son frames this within God's sovereignty. He remains the one who judges his people. So the nations become the agents for judgment against Israel. But remember that if we read the book of Revelation, actually, if we read what happened to Babylon, was actually a judgment from God for them oppressing the people of God also. So there is judgment against the people of Israel, but God also brings judgment against those nations. The final section of the Psalm, chapter verse 36 to 43, turns from judgment to hope. God will vindicate his people, defeat their enemies, and restore covenant relationship. The book of Revelation. If we use this pattern to study the book of Revelation, we will see the first chapter of the book of Revelation. It's actually giving is the messenger. Yeshua is the messenger to the nation, to the seven churches. He's telling them, you are doing this wrong and you're doing this good. This is okay according to the covenant, but in this way you are transgressing, you are going against the covenant, and you have to fix this and that. If you don't fix it, I will bring judgment against you. And we will see that there is judgment from the nations because the people, God's people, rebel against him, and there is judgment. And then we will see that there is judgment from God for the nations, and the people of God are vindicated, and they are restored back to Eden in chapter 21 and chapter 22, and death is done away with. It's the same uh, pattern we will see all the way across the Bible. Let's see. So the final section of the song turns from judgment to hope. That's why this chapter, this song, is actually a song, the song of Moses, and it's actually in Revelation. It says that they will sing the song of Moses and the song and a new song. So it deals with the prophetic restoration from the people of God after they have sinned and they have transgressed the covenant. God will vindicate his people, defeat their enemies, and restore a covenant relationship. This movement aligns with the temple cosmic symbolism. The sanctuary not only order creation, but also anticipate renewal. The theology of Asinu thus ends where temple cosmology begins, with God reestablishing order out of chaos, restoring its frame not merely as natural return, but as a cosmic renewal in which heaven and earth participate as witness to the divine justice and mercy. So now the heaven and earth is not only the witnesses against justice or against a rib against Israel, but also heaven and earth become the witnesses for how God keeps his promise and bring justice, but also brings mercy. So conclusion, the Son of Asinu, when read alongside in theological symbol of the temple, illustrate a profound integration of covenant worship and creation. God as the rock anchors the cosmos and the covenant community. Israel rebellion represents a fall from sacred order into chaos. Exile is the covenantal consequence of impurity, and restoration is depicted as a new creation. That's why in the book of Revelation it says, I make all things new again. It's basically a new creation. It's a restoration. That's what it's implying. It's going to be restoration. Uh, let's see, the big new creation. Thus, the Levites' liturgical use of Hatzinu during the Sabbath's offering was not merely a recitation of history, but a cosmic proclamation that the God enthroned in the temple was or is also the Lord of creation, covenant, and ultimate renewal. So this is very important. So when they read these portions, the six portions from the book of Deuteronomy, they're actually saying that they're proclaiming that the God who is enthroned in the temple is also the Lord of creation, the Lord of covenant, and the Lord who's going to bring the ultimate renewal. And we will find that in the book of Revelation, where God says that he will make everything anew. Take it here, verse chapter 21, verse 1. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and earth has ceased to exist, and the sea existed no more. So basically, remember, the sea means chaos, and so it's basically saying that God's going to make a new creation, which everybody believes that it's going to be a new heaven and new earth, but actually is renewal of the covenant that God is going to do at the end. And then, as it says, let's read a little bit more. And the sea or chaos existed no more, and I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, made ready like a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, the residence of God is among human beings. So now it's a new creation. Now God can reside again within the human beings. Remember when Israel transgressed and the glory from God departed from the temple, and when they came back, God came back to them. But because they were it was impurity in the temple, so God do not reside inside impurity. So now we see the creation restored again. Now God can make his residence among the human beings. He will live among them. Same thing that God told the children of Israel in the book of Leviticus. I will walk among them, and I will establish my residence among them. Exodus chapter 25, verse 8. Build for me a temple that I may dwell. Uh, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death will not exist anymore, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the former things have ceased to exist. Going back to Eden. Remember that when we read this chapter, chapter 32, is not only some readings, but if we connect them to the cosmovision of the temple, the new creation motif, and the restoration of the covenant and God's justice, we will understand that it says here at the end. This become, I will read this again. Thus the Levites' liturgical use of Hatzinu during the Shabbat offering was not merely a recitation of history, but a cosmic proclamation that the God enthroned in the temple is also the Lord of creation, covenant, and ultimate renewer. Here is my reference I'm using for this study. I'm using John Walton. I'm using the Mishnah from Rosh Hashanah. I'm using Moshe Wainfield, John Walton, from the Word of Genesis. Jacob Milgrom from Leviticus chapter 1 through 6, Leviticus 1 through 16, and the blog Daniel, the Gospel according to Moses. So this is very important that we find these resources in order to study and find more information about the song that actually Moses wrote for them. But it's not only a song, it's more than that. It has to do with history from Israel and the final redemption from the people of God in the book of Revelation. I hope this study be a blessing to you and that you can continue to grow in the study of the Bible as we go into the next season shortly of the portions of the Torah. Shalom.